Help support the show by joining the Patreon or becoming a YouTube member. Also, hit that like button and subscribe if you want more Browns-focused content. Now, the NFL Combine on the surface is a big deal and a big time to talk about prospects because we finally get to see these guys run in a controlled setting. And while all of that stuff is important and newsworthy in itself, another thing that the Combine is important for is figuring out where the tea leaves are shaping for that NFL league year, especially for free agency. Now, the reason you get a lot of rumors that spew out during Combine weekend that aren't garbage is because that is a time of the year where there are a ton of reporters, a ton of agents, a ton of team personnel, all in the same place, all talking to each other. One of the guys that I know that goes down to Indianapolis every year and always comes back with some good information is Jarrett Mueller of SB Nation, Dogs by Nature. And he always drops a couple articles a year about what he's hearing. Now, to be fair, he's not trying to break any news. He makes that very clear in his article, but he is telling us, communicating to us what it is that he is hearing. So I want to discuss what the rumors are out there at the draft combine and what to make of it and what my perspective is of some of these rumors. Let's start with the first one, which is the Giants could be trading up to number one. Now, Jarrett has it in his article. Early rumors that Tennessee seemed to be locked into selecting Cam Ward with the first overall pick. Then by the time the league rolled into Indianapolis, the sentiment had switched to the Tennessee Titans are taking Abdul Carter. Then news broke that Carter has foot issues and Tennessee might need a backup plan. This morning, I was informed Tennessee was worried about Carter's injury and that trading down with the Giants was a distinct possibility. As we noted on day one, the Giants were very interested in Ward, but likely pass on Shedeur Sanders. So the word is that the Giants aren't interested in Shedeur, but are interested in Cam Ward with the third pick based on rumors at the NFL Combine. With the Browns, the thought to have Ward is the clear top. So maybe the Giants are in play to trade up to get Cam Ward. Now, I think of all of the trade up scenarios, right, if you do the math on it, there are two teams that are likely, if you just look at the history of teams in their position, to be more encouraged to go after a quarterback than average. That's Cleveland and that's New York, the Giants specifically, right? Why? Both those teams don't have first-year GMs. First-year GMs, from what I understand, tend to be a little bit more passive in that first year, right? And they're not going to necessarily hitch their wagon to a quarterback because they don't see a reason to do that this early unless they think that quarterback is amazing. This being a draft class where that is not the sentiment, right? There's no Trevor Lawrence or unanimous number one guy in this class. It's highly debated whether these guys even belong in the top 10 of most big boards. That means that I would count out pretty much every team with the first-year GM to trade up. This is just my thought about it. It's not anything I'm hearing. But I would count it out just because I just don't think a team with the first-year GM, this is a year where they're going to trade up. That leaves Cleveland, and that leaves the Giants. Now, the Giants make a lot of sense, just like Cleveland would. But Cleveland doesn't make so much sense because Cleveland has a number 2 overall pick. And if Tennessee doesn't want to take Cam Ward, then the Browns would if the Browns liked Cam Ward that much. The problem is we're hearing a lot of smoke about the Browns wanting to trade back from 2, which would indicate to me that they're aware they could get Cam Ward. They're just not that moved to buy it if they're willing to trade off that pick or they're willing to try to leverage that to get something out of New York or somebody else. It would also make sense from the perspective of Tennessee, because if you know that New York wants Cam Ward and you're going to trade back to 3 with them, you really only have to worry about Cleveland to get one of the guys that you want, right? If you want Abdul Carter and you want to trade back to 3, you got to figure out whether you think Cleveland likes Abdul Carter or not. If you get the read that Cleveland does not like Abdul Carter, then you might make that trade and sit at 3 and try to get Abdul there, or maybe you're fine with taking Travis Hunter. Like, it makes a ton of sense for, if any trade happens, it be one of these teams in the top 3 trading within themselves, because the price wouldn't be as high, and the consequence for both teams trading back and up won't be as high. So I do think that makes sense. I personally hope that this is true, because if the Giants want to trade up to 1 and Cam Ward goes 1 and the Browns get Abdul Carter, I prefer that scenario. I know there's some people who like who like Cam Ward. I'm not there. I'm not one of those people. Got to be honest with you. I'm not going to lie and act like I like a quarterback when I don't. So I'm more than fine taking Abdul Carter there, foot injury and all, because it doesn't seem like this foot injury is that big of a deal. It seems like he's been able to play on it all year. The same thing came out about Myles Garrett the year he came out of Texas A&M, that he had these foot problems, and it hasn't really mattered throughout his NFL career. So, I don't really have that much concern about Abdul Carter. If this is anything, then maybe early in his career he gets some surgery, sits out for a couple months. It's not that big of a deal. But yeah, I hope this one is true. I hope that the New York Giants are trying to trade up and go get Cam Ward, because I think the Browns' best case scenario is walking out of the draft in night 1 with Abdul Carter and seeing what happens at the end of the first round. Potentially, Sanders could fall. I think one of these quarterbacks are going to fall. If you look at the math for quarterbacks who fall, I talked about this in another video. The quarterbacks who fall fit Sanders' profile. Slightly undersized, doesn't have that eye-popping trait that a Cam Ward has. Cam Ward can get in shorts, throw at his pro day. He's going to be amazing. Somebody's going to want to draft him in the top 15. Right? Guaranteed. Shador, while he does not have a weak arm, does not have that ability. The hesitancy that people are going to have because of everybody's pent-up feelings about the Sanders family, positive or negative. And the fact that also, there's questions about how much football he can play outside of the infrastructure of what his father lays out for him, given that this would be the first time that he does that in his football career, which is, that's not, you don't want that at the top 5 pick where you're like, hey, this is the first time this guy's played without his dad coaching him. But nonetheless, right? I think that Shador, in my opinion, is still a better prospect than Cam Ward. For the Cleveland Browns, I think he's a better fit. I think there's a better chance that you get a starter for at least the term of his rookie deal out of Shador than Cam Ward. If I'm wrong on that, I'm wrong on that, but that's what I think based on what I've looked at. And if Shador does fall past 15, 17, 18, then the Browns really got to consider packaging up that 4th round pick with pick 33, my bad, to go trade up for Shador. I think all of that is more preferable to me, just my opinion, than taking a quarterback at 2 when you could use that pick to get somebody who could help you on the defensive or offensive side of the ball, who has a better chance of working out than any of these quarterback prospects. Now, if you want to spend that 2nd round pick with the 4th on Shador or Cam Ward, I ain't really going to have too much beef with that. But if you want to spend a number 2 overall pick on one of those guys, I do have concerns, because the probability that these guys work out just not strong enough to spend a delicate resource like that on. So yeah, that's what I hope there. Let's look at some of these other rumors that Jared has in the article that he dropped about day 1. This was an interesting blurb here, right? He says Myles Garrett will not be traded. Myles Garrett will not be extended, most likely. Myles Garrett will get his current contract ripped up, have a new deal signed. This will be unlikely to happen in the near future, probably weeks away from happening. Okay, so these 4 things. Interesting that it's worded like that. I think what's going on here from talking to Jared is Myles Garrett's not going to get traded. The Browns have been pretty firm on that. They're not going to trade him. If the Browns are not going to trade Myles doesn't want to sign an extension, but he will be open to signing a new deal if the Browns are unwilling to trade him. Now, walk with me here, because this is just me speculating right now. That was Jared's, what he's hearing. This is Quincy speculating now, separately, independently from that. This is not something that Jared has speculated. It's just something that I'm saying. Just I don't want to put words in somebody's mouth or make people think that Jared's reporting something when he's not. So let me be clear on this. This is me speculating. One of the things I think could be the case with Myles wanting a new deal, right? Not an extension, but a new deal. Why would Myles want a new deal but not an extension, right? Money is money either way, right? I think there's a good reason for this. One, if Myles Garrett signs a new deal, well, there's the possibility that he can add things to the contract that are not in there right now and have a better chance of getting those things in the actual contract versus if he's trying to negotiate an extension. One of the things that Myles could get in a new contract is potentially a no trade clause, right? This would also mean more money because when you're extended, the money that gets reported is part of your extensions in there. So some of the money that you got paid already, this would say, nah, this is going to be all new money, right? Like he would sign a new deal. It's all new money. It's not anything from that original contract or the 2 years that were on the deal. But anyways, you could get something like a no trade clause. Why would Myles want a no trade clause? Well, a no trade clause would give Myles Garrett leverage in the future if he wants to be traded again to actually get where he wants to get to. I think Myles saw himself in this situation, looked at it and said, hey, I might not have the tools to maneuver my way out of it if this becomes something I want to do. Maybe he's willing for the right price to give it a try for a year or two, right? Give Andrew Berry's plan a good old try for a couple of years. But he might get to the point to where he says, hey, I might want out again in a couple of years. And if he gets to that point, he's going to want something in his back pocket he can use his leverage to get where he wants to get to. Because right now, the Browns could trade him to Jacksonville, right? He can do nothing about it. So if I'm Myles, I try to work something in a new deal to get me leverage. That's what makes signing a new contract worth it for me, right? If we're thinking about this from the perspective of how do you get a deal done, right? And if money's not the only thing that can get this thing done, because if it was just money, he would be open to signing an extension. There would be no friction on that. But the fact that it's out there, it would likely be a new deal, that makes me think, okay, well, this is still a little bit more than just about money. And if it's more than just about money, it's about putting yourself in a position to where if you want to get out, you can. So maybe that means a shorter term with a no trade clause. Maybe that means a shorter term with a no tag clause where it says, hey, you cannot franchise tag me. That's something that you can get in the contract. I think it's been done before. I think other players have had a no tag clause in their contract. So he could say, hey, I'm going to sign this deal. I'm going to have 3 years on it. It's going to give me a bunch of guaranteed money. But at the end of these 3 years, I'm hitting free agency. I'll make a decision after that, but like no tag, nothing. I'm hitting free agency. For the Browns, it gives them 3 years of security, knowing Myles Garrett's going to be on the roster in 3 years of time to get him to sign another extension and feel much better about where he is in Cleveland long term. So that's the benefit for the Browns to do it is, hey, it gives us time to make a case to this guy that we are somewhere he could win a Super Bowl with. And in that 3 years, you would hope that the Browns hit on a franchise quarterback and are on a completely different trajectory so that when that time comes, Myles Garrett wants to re-up with Cleveland. And if you're Myles Garrett, the benefit is obvious. You get to be a free agent at the end of these 3 years, so you don't even got to worry about being traded to where you want to be traded to. You can just go and sign wherever you get traded to. If Myles signs a new deal, I would be very surprised if he didn't do something that allowed him to control his destiny in the future. And I think that's why you're hearing, no, he doesn't want an extension. Because I believe it. I don't think he wants an extension. There's no reason for Myles Garrett to sign an extension. But a new contract, there's a lot of reasons why that could benefit both sides. Short term, he can get the money. Long term, it gives the Browns a chance to make a case to him. Because right now, the Browns are trying to make a case to him long term after they won 3 games. It's just not going to be good. But if they have a couple of winning seasons, if they get to a conference championship game in the next 3 years, which sounds crazy right now, but like Detroit did this 2 or 3 years after they had a pretty horrible season with Jared Goff, then all of a sudden the chance to keep him feels a lot better. It's got to be a long-term play here by both sides. And I think that's something to think about. You know, if I were Myles and I knew that there wasn't really a good way to get what I wanted this offseason, I would try to use a new contract to try to help me get what I want if that's still something I want in a couple of years. Might have to play the long game on this if you're Myles Garrett, right? And if you're the Cleveland Browns, you might have to play along with the long game on this one to give yourself more time to make a more compelling argument because you're just not going to make a great argument this offseason. You won 3 games last year. The vibes are bad. You don't have a quarterback. Like, nobody feels great. But you want to give yourself some time. Think something like this does offer both parties more time and potentially for Myles the control he desires of his own fate. Something unconventional probably has to happen to squash this situation. Because again, like we discussed, the Browns ain't trading Myles. It's become very clear. Like everybody, it's also in this article. If you go and read it, that Jared has, that most people understand that the Browns aren't going to trade Myles. But Myles is not just going to come back just to come back. He's got to get something out of this too. And he's a big enough player to where this is something that he could get out of it. Something to watch. Just my thoughts. I think that might be where this is headed. Another thing that Jared was talking about in this article is the Cam Ward stuff, right? Like the Browns, there's a lot of word about Cam Ward. And I don't know if it's smoke or not, but it does seem like there's a lot of energy towards Cam Ward in this. We'll see what that turns into. With the combine, stuff you hear about the draft is pretty tentative. Like I've seen some reports saying that the Browns are definitely locked in to quarterback. That's just not something I can really buy into, not because of my own personal feelings about the quarterback position, but because it's February. And like you're expecting me to think that the Browns, in one of the most important decisions that they're going to have to make in both these guys' career, Kevin and Andrew's career, have already made the decision on quarterback. Like not just like the decision on a specific player, that they're just going to take a quarterback at 2. That's not how decisions get made, right? Like that's not a good way, at least, to make a decision. If the reports were the Browns have decided that they're going to take they love Cam Ward but you're hearing both, or if you hear these reports, people are saying that the Browns are going to take a quarterback, why would they commit to taking a position? Not a player, right? You don't draft positions, you draft players. So any report that tells you that they're committed to taking a position, it just smells bad to me. You feel me? Because I don't think that's how teams make decisions. I could be wrong on that, but I'm just giving you my 2 cents Another interesting blurb here in this article. As for the free agent market, most teams, including Cleveland, are preparing for fewer and fewer impact guys to hit the market. The growing cap, owners' willingness to pressure and use bonuses to spread out cap hits, and smarter front office means the market is dwindling. What does this mean? This means that free agency as we know it is not as strong as it used to be because less players are hitting the market. So where free agency is headed is in the trade market, right? Because teams are willing to keep guys under control and sign these longer term deals, the trade market is where you can get talent, that top level talent, not necessarily the free agent market. So that's something to keep an eye on with free agency rapidly coming around the corner. The Browns likely not going to be giant players in free agency, probably going to be modest in free agency, but will probably try to be more aggressive in trade. Last thing Jarrett got here was other teams have basically given up that Myles will be available in the trade. We talked about that being a distinct possibility. Another thing he hits on is this Nick Chubb situation, which he says, hey, they get the sense that Andrew Berry is noting that Nick Chubb will hit the market out of respect for the back so they can negotiate based on the market. Now, when most people saw this, and even when I saw this, I was concerned that the Browns were just going to let Nick Chubb walk. What it seems like they're doing is trying to avoid putting themselves in the same position that the New York Giants put themselves in with Saquon Barkley, where the Giants offered Saquon something well under market value. That number insulted Saquon Barkley, and Saquon Barkley signed somewhere else without giving New York a chance to match because he was insulted by the original offer that New York gave him. The Browns don't want to repeat that mistake where Nick Chubb feels insulted by an offer, walks around, finds the market for him, gets a deal that he likes, and because he's upset at the low offer the Browns gave him, he takes the offer with the other team without even contacting the Browns. Basically, what the Browns are doing here is actually prioritizing their relationship with Nick Chubb, where they're saying, hey, go out there, see what you can get. We will see it, and we will see if we can match it. If somebody offers you buku bucks, okay, man, you do what you can do, right? If somebody offers you 12, 15 million, yeah, man, you got to take it because we're not going to give it. But if the offer is modest, we'll match it, right? If it's around 5 million or something like that, 7 with incentives, okay, yeah, we'll match it. I think that's what the Browns are trying to do with Nick Chubb. I don't think this is them trying to let Nick Chubb go. I think this is them trying to avoid making mistakes that they themselves have made with players before, where they put out a low offer. The player was insulted. And even though the player signs a similar offer somewhere else, they don't want to sign with you because they're still mad about the low offer, even though the offer wasn't even low to begin with, right? Protect yourself. Just let them see what the market is and say, hey, we'll give you whatever they're offering out of respect. So I think Nick Chubb's going to be back. So I feel much better about that. We'll see what happens here because I don't think the market's going to be crazy. I don't think he's going to get a crazy offer. Shortly after the PWFA meeting, the Giants are probably out on Sanders, but Cleveland is open to moving out of two if the right offer comes along. Again, something to think about, right? With the Giants, we're hearing that they want to move up to get Cam Ward. With the Browns, we're hearing that they want to move back. So I think one team is truly interested in Cam Ward, the Giants. I don't feel like the Browns are. That's just my guess. And that's not even based on how I feel about Cam Ward as a prospect. It's just my guess based on the direction of where these teams are trying to go in the draft. The Browns aren't trying to secure Cam Ward and trade up to 1. You're not hearing anything about that, but you are hearing that with the Giants that they do want to trade up. And I do think of all the teams, the Giants are the most likely to take a quarterback. And the reason why a quarterback will go in the top 5 is because the Giants are going to select one. they fit all the parameters, right? And they seem to have the thirst to take a quarterback at 3. With Cleveland, constant smoke about moving back. With New York, constant smoke about Cam Ward and moving up. It's interesting. Be interested to see how the board falls and how the Browns think that the board is going to fall. But yeah, I think the Giants wanting to move up to get Cam Ward, I think that's real. The question is, do they ever feel the need to move up? Because if they're sure that Tennessee wants Abdul Carter, like if they called Tennessee and said, hey, you guys want Abdul, we want Cam, let's do a swap here. Well, then they know that Tennessee's out on Cam Ward. The question then becomes, what about Cleveland? Does Cleveland want Cam Ward? Do we have to jump ahead of Cleveland? Now, there's been smoke that the Browns really love Cam Ward this week. I find that interesting, right? Maybe it's Cam Ward's agent. Maybe it's the Cleveland Browns themselves. Maybe it's the Tennessee Titans sliding out information, or somebody doing favors in the Browns organization for the Tennessee Titans for whatever reason, to get the market going on Cam. There's a lot of different ways you can look at it, right? Maybe the Browns are actually legitimately interested in Cam Ward, which would not be crazy. Cam Ward is a quarterback. He is the highest rated quarterback in this year's draft class, and certainly the one who has the least amount of physical limitations in this draft class. There are other concerns with Cam Ward that I have, but physically you're not super limited with him as a prospect, so maybe there's just legitimate interest. The Browns, especially if they're considering passing on the quarterback at 2, should be thorough about their decision at quarterback. It should not be made up now. They should be really thinking about this up until the day of the draft. If they want to pass on a quarterback, if that's the right decision to make, because this is a team that cannot afford to miss on quarterback. That doesn't mean that you take somebody you don't believe in, but it does mean that you really do the research to make sure if you don't believe in this guy, that's where you're comfortable standing there. So it might just be that, right? It might be that the Browns are trying to drive up the sense of urgency for New York to trade up the 1 so they know they can get whatever player non-quarterback that they want at 2. That could be part of it, right? And maybe Tennessee and Cleveland both benefit from that because maybe Tennessee wants Travis, right? And they've talked to each other and say, hey, if we can get Cam taken number 1 overall by the Giants, it benefits both of us. Let's talk about it like that. Could be that. Could be a million different ways or a million different reasons for why you're hearing what you're hearing, right? Like with the combine and everything else and things about prospects, you got to apply some critical thinking to everything that you hear. But I don't know. I feel like the same way Jared does, that a lot of this stuff we're hearing about Cam Ward feels like smoke to me. But you never know. So that's going to be something interesting to watch. I do think Cam Ward ends up with the Giants at the end of this. I'm hoping that they trade up to go get him because if that frees up Abdul Carter for the Browns to take it 2, I think that's best case scenario for them. But y'all let me know what y'all think in the comment section down below. Have a great day. Have a better night. Peace.